Hi, Cristina.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good, good. Everybody's very excited.
I'm looking forward to this. I'm going to put more light on. I'm realizing you can't do well. So let me just turn on the light really quick.
No problem. Take your time. Hi, Ophir. We don't hear you.
אהלן טל, מה קורה?
Oh, what's up?
פגז, יאללה, מחכים.
אופיר, מה הולך?
You have Cristina.
יאללה, אסף. מה נשמע? חזרת
Everything.
חזרת, אה?
במקרה, לא עולה עוד הרבה זמן.
הכי טוב.
What's his name, Cristina?
Alighiero.
Again? Sorry.
Alighiero.
Alighiero. Oh, it's very sweet. Oh, my goodness. Hello.
His names.
So he woke up a little early, so sorry.
So
But my husband is going to be home soon, so he'll relieve me. He'll come and get him.
it's a double pleasure. Don't worry about it.
I'm sure all of you have been dealing with this working from home.
No, it's, yeah. And yeah, you know mine, so it's a challenge by, yeah. Yeah. We're gonna wait. It's a little bit, it's earlier than we usually. Usually we start at 2 p.m., which is 9 p.m. in Israel. So everybody puts, most of the team, most of the group is from Israel, and we usually do it in Hebrew. But we're gonna wait a few more minutes. Usually people tend to be late. We're still Israelis, so time is a flexible concept.
That's okay. Don't worry. Look at me from last week. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, don't worry about it. Yossi is happy. Yossi was very disappointed that he wouldn't be able to attend because he was busy a couple of weeks ago. And I told him, especially for him, so we're all good. So we will wait a few more minutes, and then we're gonna go and do it. But it's a pleasure to having you, and for us, I'll tell you, like, I'm gonna start saying that Israel doesn't have so many Olympic medalists. So for us, having somebody that had this experience, it's something special for us. How many we have, Yossi? 3, no? 73 years, 3 medals, no?
Four medals.
4 medals, okay.
Yeah, martial arts 3. What else?
Judo, we have 3 in judo, and one in sailing.
Judo.
Sailing.
Judo.
Sailing, I think one.
Yeah.
That's it. 73 years. Hi, Shlomo.
Hi. Surfing.
Surfing? Windsurfing, no?
Windsurfing, yeah.
Yeah, windsurfing. Windsurfing, we're good at windsurfing and fighting other people.
Yeah.
We're good at. Judo, we're very good at judo. And from that, I think we have only one female winner, right? Yael Arad, I think. Yeah, that's the only one. Yeah.
She was the first.
She was the first, yes. So we're going to start slowly, and whoever going to join us, going to join us.
And I can get my, I'm looking to turn off my, so you don't hear my email coming in. I'm going to turn that off. And I turned off my phone. My phone connects to the computer, so I turned that off. But I can get my photo album too. I'm old school, right? I don't have a lot of digital of anything, so I have photo albums of pictures of things. If you want me to.
Like this, and yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good. We have you, so that is the most important. We're gonna start while we're talking. We're gonna start Facebook Live. And I wanted to say something, and I'm not sure what I wanted to say before. I had, by the way, a chance to meet this week. We're going to discuss it a little bit later. Mao, which represents Israel in the Tokyo Olympics, running the marathon. So she competed here in New York, and I had the chance to have lunch with her. It was a pleasure. It was very enjoyable. Sport in Israel is a funny thing. So not a lot of money is involved in it. So we're not very good at it. But we use, first of all, welcome everybody, whoever see us on Facebook or whatever it is, everybody is welcome. We're having interviewing today, Cristina, I hope I pronounce your name, the last name right. Teuscher, right? We're interviewing Cristina Teuscher, which is a two-time Olympic medal winner, to hear from her about her experience and lessons for life. And we have Cristina here with us today. So if the interview is going to be in English, so if anybody has anything to ask, want to ask something, feel uncomfortable talking English, can text it to me and I'll ask Cristina on your behalf. And the first question that I wanted to start with, Cristina, is maybe give us a little bit of background. I know you because I read about you after we met. Cristina is the swimming coach for my kids. This is how I know her. And I can tell you like this. She was on a maternity leave and my kids swimming. And when she came back, I was the first practice when I came, it was there. And I was like, there is a difference. There is a difference in what there was before she came. And like, I noticed it immediately. And then I start, who is she? And reading about it. And after that, of course, I came and I asked her to, if she's going to be willing to interview for us. We're using athletes and winners and using the podium as a metaphor for success, and having the opportunity to speak with somebody that got to the top of the field that they mastered the field. It's an opportunity. So Cristina, maybe a little bit about yourself. Most of the people, especially in Israel, are not familiar with you. A little bit about yourself, where, and then we're gonna go down the road with a question, whatever you're gonna share with us. I'm gonna save with a question. If not, I'm gonna ask directly. And again, if somebody wants to ask something, feel free, just unmute yourself or text me or whatever it is, and we're gonna go from there.
Yeah, so I am, I'm American, born and raised, born in the Bronx. And I am a product of a city-funded program. I grew up swimming at the Y, and then I swam on a summer club league, and the coach told my mother, your kids should swim year-round. And so my mom found a program in our hometown, New Rochelle, in New York, and signed us up. From there, I guess it's history. I mean, my parents were not swimmers themselves. I'm watching my son because he has a tendency to turn off the power. And they were my mother, she was sent to go swim with her cousins when she was little, and they called her the tree trunk. They would make fun of her. And my father can't really swim. And so it was just something my parents saw that I took to. So whenever I was fussy as a child, my mother would put me in the kitchen sink with water, or in the bathtub, and I would just play for hours. And from that city-funded program, I went to a club team here close to in Westchester with John Collins, who actually had 2 Olympians before me. And he was a guy that at the age of 12 that he would call me Cindy. He would basically say to me, like, I say, my name is Cristina. He said, well, I'll remember your name when it's worth remembering. You know, that kind of mentality, like tough coaching. And he would take me to meets where I would get beaten all the time by older kids. He goes, those are the people you have to beat. He goes, who cares about being a big fish in a small pond? You want to be a big fish in a big pond. And so I credit him with opening my eyes quite a bit to looking large and wide. And I think some bit of competitive experience and passion for the water. And I swam on the U.S. national team for 8 years, and I captained the team the last 3 years. And I was in the 1996 Olympics. I swam 2 individual events and they didn't go as well. I'm happy to talk about that. But we won gold in the 4x200 free relay. We broke the Olympic record. And then for 2000, I made it in the 200 individual medley, and I won a bronze medal there. So I swam professional 1 year after that. I went to Columbia University in between my 2 years, and then I did INSEAD for business school. And I got I do executive coaching. I did executive coaching for a while, and now I run my own swim school with my husband, and we have 2 kids, and we're here in Connecticut. So not that far from where I first started.
This is an amazing start. And one of my first question was, how did you get to swimming? And obviously it went through a city program, but my question is,
yeah,
when you get to this point, when you are like on the top, like, is that something that you say, you know what, I started swimming, I liked it, and I decided I'm going to go this direction? Or I started and I rolled with it, and in some point I found out I'm good or better than the most, and I'm just going to, you know what, I'll just run with it because I'm good at it, and not necessarily because this is something that, so is the passion for it, in some point I'm going to get to have passion for it. But it's something that was evolved, or like you said, from day one, this is like, you know, the story about this is what I want to do. And
yeah. Hold on one second. It's an evolution to that.
Yeah, go.
No, I'm right here. He's climbing the stairs. Trying to see if I can keep. So I feel very passionate about this because I work with kids. I've also coached at the highest collegiate level. I've coached kids at the highest national level. And in short, at a very young age, it should all be about initially introducing your kids to lots of sports. Literally, swimming was the only thing that calmed me down. I was an intense child. My mother was like, put her in the pool, and I calmed down. And then she was like, okay, this must be something good. Keep it going. But I also played soccer. I tried sailing. I got kicked out of tennis because I was a pain in the butt. And it wasn't anything that my parents had any idea. And I like to bring up the fact that they weren't swimmers, because oftentimes I'm dealing with sometimes parents who have a 5 or a 6-year-old, and they think, you know, what do I need to do to get this kid swimming on a swim team? And I'm like, why don't you first just try to get them safe in the water, enjoying the water, because it's a long road if you're already thinking of scholarship in college. And I dealt with kids in college age who just didn't want to do it anymore. They were ready to retire at 18. And I think there's an issue if you finish a sport collegiately and you don't ever want to do that sport again in your life. There's a mismatch of what was driving and the motivation and where it was coming. So initially it was just always passion for the water. It still is passion for the water, but I think more towards 12, when I started to I was competitive by nature. I had an older sister. I wanted to keep up with her. I loved to race, but I didn't like to go to practice. So probably around the age of 7 or 8, my mother, you know, when I'd say, I don't want to go to swimming, my mother would say, well, you made a commitment. So you're going to keep the commitment. At the end of the season, you can decide if you want to stop. So I think that was an important part of the process too. It's like my mother's role is about what's going to make this person a healthy and strong adult, an individual. And then there was the part of me taking ownership for it. So then around 12 or 13, where, you know, my coach would give us sets and be like, well, figure it out. These are the people you've got to swim faster than. Nobody is going to be able to get you to swim practice. I don't care how many parents wake up at 5 to get their child to morning practice and get them a perfect breakfast and take them to the pool. It's not going to translate unless you're making it's coming from the child. So I had to be the one to wake up my mother to go to swim practice. I had to be the one to be like, okay, here we go. Here's my schedule. And I think the more that it comes from the child, the more that it evolves into really being your own. So sorry for the long-winded answer. I just
No.
passionate about that.
No, it's perfect. That's exactly what we came here to hear. At what point, the Olympic became a goal?
14. So at 14, I won my first junior national title, and I made senior nationals. And going there, I thought, wow, okay, I can make senior nationals. And at 16, I won my first national title, and it was 2 years out from Olympic trials. At 14, I went to go see Olympic trials and so between 14 and 16, I was really starting to think, I want to be there. I can do this. So
I have a question about Olympic training. Because I know you coach. I don't know if you still do, but I know that you coached. How much of a difference there is? Because this is one of the conversation with Maor, the Israeli Olympian. One of my question to her was, and I'm wondering how the difference between behind the physical, the swimming training, the difference between what Olympians get back then versus what happens today regarding understanding the pressure that this young men and women go through this period when they need to practice and work out and commit, and the dedication, and of course what they lose compared to, you can say win, but also lose compared to their friends. How much different there is between what it was in your time, going back 96, 2000, to what it is today, and the understanding of this level of pressure from mentality, psychology, whatever it is, today versus today, back then versus today, sorry.
So in short, we overtrained. So when I was training, I trained too much. I was in the water 12 times a week. So doubles, Monday through Friday, once on Saturday, once on Sunday. Hold on a second, my husband's here. I'm gonna hand him the baby.
No problem, no problem.
He needs a diaper.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we were still very old school and antiquated in our training. It was very much of the age of, one of the best coaches in the States was a sniper in Vietnam. And he wasn't even a swimmer, but he would train the swimmers. He was the head coach at Stanford. He would train the swimmers like, you know, Army cadets. And I think there was very much a mentality of like, the more grueling the workouts, the faster you will be. And I think that evolved towards the end of my career. They got very smart. They started doing much more of training like they do now for what they've always done for track and field. It's always about performance on an ongoing basis. Whereas when I was swimming, it was like 2 times a year you wanted to peak. So you slugged it through in training for the rest of the period, and it proved to not be useful. So I would say from going now probably to 24 hours of training now, what people are doing more of is they might dedicate that much time a year, like a week, 24 to 30 hours. But it'll be out of the water. It'll be, you know, massage, technique stuff outside, reviewing video, all of those different pieces that enhance speed and technique much more so. Daddy home? Daddy is home. Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It's very interesting that you're saying it. I'm going to relate it to 2 things that I heard. One a while back, and one actually recently. I think it was Kiyosaki that said that if you do business and you start, don't underachieve. So don't burn yourself. You start too strong and you're going to burn yourself. At some point, you're going to get to the point that you don't want to do it or you can't do it. And then sorry?
No, go ahead. I know him. I've met him before. So yeah.
Robert Kiyosaki, you met him?
Yes, he's friendly with my father. I'll tell you about that after, but go ahead. That's really funny.
Again, good, bad, but he said that once. And then I heard an interview with a very famous MMA coach with Joe Rogan. And he said to Joe Rogan, which is an MMA fighter as well, he said, do you know that you can get out of practice sore?
Yeah.
I said, what do you mean? This is what I do every time. like I push myself to the limit. He said, no, you can't do that. If you push yourself every time to the limit, the next day you can perform properly. So it's better for you to undertrain yourself to 80% or 70% or whatever it is, but then you can repeat it over time, and over time you accumulated abilities versus you try to push yourself to the limit every single time. So it was like, oh my goodness, I'm doing it wrong for like 30 years now. I don't know, 40 years is 48, I think.
It's so true. I was working with a performance enhancement like strength trainer, and he was like, only go to 70%. And it was so different from what I'd grown up. I'd grown up that if you threw up in the pool or you passed out after a workout, that was a good sign. So definitely sports have gotten more efficient in how people train, how they focus on things. So I wish I grew up swimming now.
Yeah, that's true, madam. No, it's the same when we're discussing it, and we try to relate part of what we're talking today to business. We have this conversation, especially with real estate, but everything is so long. The fact that you need to be able to perform over a long period of time versus, as you said, to pick in a couple of, instead of doing it like, oh my goodness, I'm going to do it so strong every time, and then you burn yourself to some point. So, okay, I'm going to maybe a little bit lower, but I'm going to do it. And the accumulation of success versus one big one or whatever it is.
Yes.
Guys, if you have any question, feel free to ask. If somebody in Facebook, feel free to join. Another question that comes, and I think it's a natural question to something like this. Obviously, it's a lot of dedication, especially getting before the Olympics. I'm going to guess every competition. Looking at back, what you paid for it, and then if you want to share with us what was the price to get to that point, we'll be happy to hear. But my question is actually looking back to it. It's like, oh yeah, it's worth it, or you know what? Looking back, I liked it, but looking back, maybe I would redo it differently.
Yeah. It's a good question. I think there's a benefit in that I was young. So there weren't a lot of distractions. It's all I knew. And there are two things I could do this, but the first is, I think anyone who achieves excellence has to have a love of process. It's about constantly going back of what you've done and re-editing, editing, feedback, taking feedback and change, and then coming back. And there's such a monotony to a process. And think about swimming in a pool down back and forth, just looking at a black line. There has to be kind of an obsessive nature to it to be able to reach a high level. I've been talking about this with a friend. It's almost this, that's the piece that's rewarded. There's got to be a certain amount of talent, maybe some competitiveness, but really the dedication to the process is always what outlasts and outperforms the rest and trumps the rest. When you look at somebody like Michael Phelps, who's just so exceptional at what he does, so not only physically gifted, competitively gifted. I mean, that guy, I remember I was on his first Olympic team and the older guys would just tease him. He was 15 years old, which is unheard of. A 15-year-old boy on a team. Yes, for girls tend to peak earlier, but for guys, not necessarily. They would tease him and he would just get so riled up and be like, oh yeah, just wait 4 years. I'm going to kick your butt. And I mean, the guy meant it. So, and then the process. So that came from his coach, I think, initially, but he was a guy that I would see him. He would get out of the water or get out of from a competition, and his coach would say, drink your protein shake now. It's within 10 minutes. Stop talking, drink your drink, get in the water. You have to warm down 500 meters because that race was 400 meters. You know, there was a science to everything there. I would say my interest in sport was not so heavily in the process orientation. I just liked the art of it, the feel of it. But the people who are very focused on the process, I always thought outweighed the others. Look at Roger Federer, right? This is a guy who always comes back to the drawing board, always reapply. How do I do it? How do I do it? So I would say a lot in a champion is not, it's not a sexy thing that you see. It's a lot of what's not seen
Agreed, yeah.
in the process. And I think that's applicable to everything. And sometimes all of that shows up, but sometimes it doesn't show up, right? You don't reap the benefits of it, but it's such an important part of it, just always coming back to the process of it. So there is that piece. And I think, I mean, I could talk to you about leaving sport and then how I applied stuff leaving sport and how difficult it was, because sport is so different than real life. But that's another can of worms. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about it.
We're going to get there. Don't worry about it. We're going to get there. I mean, I want to focus on the part where you are in the middle of it, and then we're going to ask about. I have a couple of questions about what happened after. I'm going to start with that question. While you're doing it, and this is a question I asked Maura, and I think I have a couple of questions about what happened after. I'm going to start with that question. Somebody. While you're doing it, and this is a question I asked Maura, and I think
Somebody, David.
Somebody, a background.
David.
Okay, here we go. Where is Cristina? Yeah.
אתה לא נשמע טוב.
אני לא נשמע טוב?
עכשיו בסדר, אוקיי.
Where is Cristina? Here we go. Cristina, you jump because somebody, yeah. So when you're in the middle of this and you're working out, the Olympic is coming, at the back of your mind or during you developing this career as a swimmer, does a question comes up, what happened next? Or this is something that either you say, you know what, I'm not going to deal with it right now, or this is something that, you know, you started thinking and working on it. And I asked Mark the same question, which she was a little bit, I'm not sure she didn't take it. She's like, you wouldn't ask a professional soccer player that question. I said, I actually do, because sport is such a short career. So you got to, the way I look at it, not being a professional sport, like, okay, you got to ask what happened next. But apparently, and I know that some doesn't. And now I was wondering from you, is that something that bothered you while you were swimming or you working? What's going to be the next step in my life?
Yeah, I think it's something, unfortunately, in this country, it's very overlooked. If you think about where everyone makes money off an athlete, where an athlete makes money is when they're performing. And then afterwards, it's like, goodbye, out of the spotlight, done. So as an athlete, you grow up with all this structure, all this sense of predictability. And even in the sense of within your sport, you perform, do something, you get immediate feedback. And all of that goes away when you leave the sport. During my training, I always knew education was a big part. That's why I chose to go to Columbia. It's not a very likely choice. A lot of my counterparts went to big NCAA powerhouse schools. NCAAs, if you're not familiar with the American system, is basically the top. Each of the colleges are broken into different divisions, and they compete nationally. And so I was in Division 1 for competition, but basically when people, a lot of people choose schools where they're going to compete at a high level, but maybe not necessarily focused on the academic aspects. Sometimes you can find those places where you have both. Stanford is one example, obviously, and there are a lot of schools are, but many times when you go with a scholarship, you're just expected to focus on the sport. So for me, it was very important to choose to decline scholarship and choose academics as well, to have that balance. One, because if I make swimming everything, then I lose a piece of who I am. I wanted the balance. But two, I knew in the back of my head, this is a short period of my life. What am I doing after this? And I started to follow some of the things, but I didn't have a clear picture of what I wanted to do. And I would say to you, there is not a lot of support for athletes to know what they want to do after, because then your mind is focused elsewhere. As a coach, many coaches want to see their athletes 100% focused obsessively on the sport. So there isn't a lot of focus that way. So I have to say I struggled with the process for 7 years afterwards. I think there are a lot of components that play into it. One is I've read tons of books on transition. I think this led me to do executive coaching. And this I think is applicable to anyone leaving a career, even those at the end of their career or working, that what are they doing next? What's their legacy? What are they working on? Is that you have to start planning and looking at that stuff before you leave, and looking into certain interests, looking into certain different pieces, because you're starting to help create that bridge to the next step, even if you don't necessarily have it figured out yet. I didn't do that. I figured I'll figure it out after. So that affected, I think, the biological aspect. You go from training obsessively for so long, and then all of a sudden you just stop short. And now you're sedimentary, you're sitting and you're studying, or you're doing other things. You're not basically physically active. The expression of what you do on a daily basis isn't necessarily physical. That affected me quite a bit. My body, it just changed. Went from still eating so much, but I wasn't burning as many calories. And all of my friends who swam said, oh, it takes like 2 years for your body to recalibrate. Where I knew of a German counterpart on this woman, Francie van Olmstek, that she talked about actually tapering out of her career. And I thought, how come we don't do that over here? Where she literally, a tapering is where you go from continuing to do the same amount of yardage that your body's used to, and then slowly reduce. So she almost gave her body an ability to kind of go out in a decline that way. There's also the aspect of how sport prepares you for life in so many ways, in terms of pressure, performance with pressure, an ability to be disciplined, to, follow up on yourself, to be very real with yourself in terms of feedback, but very grossly underprepared, and I would say even immature in there are certain aspects of life. So I personally had a belief like I could control things in life because swimming gave me that feeling, right? I felt that I could do things. It was very black and white. I did a certain amount of work, life was fair, and then I would get this output. And everybody knows life is not like that. I mean, it's a very mature way to look at life, but everything in my life had worked out that way. I had also just, and obviously it started from a young age, my swimming 5, 6, 7 years old. I had a life, decades to get better in the sport. And now all of a sudden I was looked at by other people. It's like, well, you went to Columbia, you're an Olympian, you must be smart and be able to put things together and competitive. Here, let's put you in this position. And that it didn't fit and it didn't work. It was very hard. It was very hard to get used to the idea that, like, wow, you really have to start from the bottom again. Adjustments in a lot of ways that for, a typical person makes sense, but I just couldn't compute it. I had a really hard time with all of these transitions like that. So I think there's so many pieces that come into it, and there are people who can dovetail their career very well because they hold on to their sport for quite some time until they're really just ready to just say, I'm out of here. And they already know the next steps. They've been preparing, they've been going to school for it. And then others who just do it cold turkey, or you're forced to retire, and that can be very difficult. So
I heard a general once says, he was giving a talk, and he said, you know what I worth? And said, I want a foam cap, like the plastic cap, foam cap. He said, what do you mean you're a general? And he said, as a general, somebody used to pick up my luggage. I had the entourage that I had a private plane. I got to every place that I got. I had somebody pick me up from the plane. I had a suite in the hotel. Somebody would take me to wherever I need to go to the meeting or give a talk. And then I retired. And when I retired, nobody carried my luggage. Nobody waited for me at the suite. And I had to drink coffee in a foam cup. So this is who I am. My position worth all these benefits.
Yeah.
Me as a person, just. So my question goes to, when you look at it today, and again, I'm going to go back to what expectation were. How much is Cristina is the person versus how much Cristina as a swimmer is the people, what people look at you today, what it was and what is today. Who is Cristina as a person versus who is Cristina as an Olympic swimmer? Look at you and said, okay, this is, and how you take it and how you accept it as like, yeah, I was that person and I'm a different person now.
So when you're closer to it, right? Olympic trials for swimming is going on right now in this country. It's, to me, the hardest meet in the world. Only top 2 in each event make it. I was watching some of it last night, and I'm still get nervous, but not the same way where there was a feeling of dread. So I would say a few years after leaving the sport, I had much more hard time because I didn't really know my identity yet without the swimming. And I was desperately trying to fill in the gaps of what was Cristina with just the Olympics as a piece of me, not the whole of what everyone, because when people talk to you, go, yeah, you're the Olympian. I mean, I would get stopped in the parking lot. I go, oh, are you the Olympian? And I would say, no, that's my sister. When I was younger, because I was trying so hard to figure out who am I without it. I took lots of different jobs. I was spending a lot of time outside of the country, interesting enough, because, you know, I have roots in different places, but it was a lot for me also to just try to figure out who I am without the swimming, without being in the US and feeling all the obligations attached to my swimming identity. But now, I obviously that transition has happened. And I think it took me those 7 years when I mentioned that of the transition. I was in business school. I was in INSEAD. I went to Australia to watch the World Championships, and I was in the stands in the nosebleed section watching the US team, and I was cheering like crazy, and I just felt joy. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm done with this. I know who I am. I know where I am. And it's okay that swimming is just a part of me and this is past me. But I do believe that athletes just, and anyone, right? You talked about that general, that's a perfect example, that you grow up with such such a phenomenal structure around you and an ability to know who you are literally and rank and where, and then all of a sudden that disappears. It's, how do you separate your identity from that and know integrally, like, what part of that is still me, who I am, but now I'm going to be able to evolve and keep growing in other ways that weren't allowed to when I was in that position or in that structure. That's the beauty of life, right? That's the beauty. That's the only constant we have is change.
First of all, I agree. And again, for me, I think coming to the United States and leaving everything behind and everybody that you know, and that's a big, and I see it's not a correlation, but this ability to invent yourself from, not from zero, but because you're still who you are, but to start everything from new people, new places, new language, new citizenship, new. It's something, and it takes time. It takes time to adjust. I'm not sure you adjust totally at any point, but and many, Asaf here, and many, and Satyana, people that came to United States. So some of what you're describing, I think, is part of it, that you are, in some point, you're a new man, woman, but
you still have the attachments, but I think the key is that that's life, and there's a beauty to that. There's a beauty to the fact that you have a different viewpoint because you come from somewhere else. There's a beauty to the fact that it isn't all just from one place. I think that's a strength, and it can be tiring, right? Because you always will view it from a different angle, but that's also an advantage. And I think there's always something about finding a home base where you don't feel like you're constantly, okay, this is new and this is new and this is just not who I am, but I'm still trying to adapt and fit in. But you can still retreat to a place that feels like home base. Whether for me, it's being in a pool, you know, it's just being in water. That's my language. Whether for you, it's just being at home with your family in your own culture, even within a foreign country, right? I think that part is so important, but I don't know, to give yourself space for that too, and have that ability to be in one and in another.
I enjoy that change. I personally, on my personal, I can understand, and I met a lot of people, a lot of Israelis that came. It was very hard for them. I actually really enjoyed it, and we had once a dinner party back home, and we had around the table neighbors. One was from a Bulgarian lady that grew up in Nigeria, and there was this Lebanese girl. I said, nowhere in the world, for me it was a lot of fun. I said, nowhere in the world I would be able to sit down and have all these different people around. This is what I like, and it was a great experience for me, and I still have it. And enjoy it even here in the building. We live, Satya lives the same place like me. There is hundreds of, we live in the same building. We live hundreds of units here, and you have people from all over the world living together and enjoy it. And I think it's a special experience. It's a special experience to it, and I love it.
Can I say something?
Sure.
My name is Yossi Lee, and thank you for coming. And I'm very excited to participate with this webinar. I want to talk with you about the mentalic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I want to know if the mentalic you can to prepare, or you should to born with this, because the physical you can to practice every single day. All the another coaches have the another strateg. And if you can to describe how you prepared before the competition, and what you can to describe about the mentalics.
It's the most important piece. So I would say in any performance, there's the blood, sweat, and tears of the preparation. And then the moment where you have to perform, you have to let it go. Let go of all of it and just say, fuck it. That really exceptional comes out. It's really true. I had a hard time with that. I'm a little too heady. But there is a lot that I did. And anything that can give you the ability to focus on the things you can control. I mean, that's the mantra of AA. I focus on the things I can control, and those that I can't, you just kind of you pray that you can just let them go. It's very similar in that sense. In all the preparation, I had a logbook. I can show them to you from the Olympics. Everything I was doing in preparation, I would write my workouts. I would write my diet. I would write what else I was doing. If anything was bothering me, I would cut out articles, anything that was inspiring. But that would be my book that when I went to the Olympics or I went to Olympic trials, I brought it with me to just be able to review, just as a reminder. And when I would go to competitions, I would always do the same things. So you get in a rhythm of it's rituals, very much so. Anything from the spiritual stuff. I mean, there were little things for me that if a ladybug landed on me or anyone in my family, that was good luck. That meant it was going to be a good swim meet. I had, different things of everything. If I did it the same way, it created a sense of calm and rhythm. And it was a way to just get my body and my mind in a place that knew, okay, this is performance time. So everything from how I warmed up, I would go to the pool before. I actually had to compete way early in the morning at 6 when no one was there. I would do a little bit more of a wake up swim. Then I would go back to the hotel. I would eat breakfast. Then I would come back. I would be already, had warmed up. I would stretch, listen to music, maybe eat a piece of fruit. And then I would get back in the water, do some pace work. And then I would get out, I would stretch again, and I would be ready to go for my morning race. Then I would go eat lunch, take a nap, come back to the pool, stretch, get in to warm up, and then put my music on, do some visualization, and then swim the night race. So there was just always the systematicness of it. Now, because the sport of swimming has been basically, you know, it's more marketable, the sport. The athletes are more marketable. Everybody wants to watch it. Now everything is about television. So I really admire the athletes now. Things don't necessarily run when you want them to. They're running when the commercial breaks are. It's fascinating, but I think even I was talking to Katie Miley. She's an Olympic swimmer also. She won the bronze medal for the 100 breaststroke in Rio. She swam her race, I want to say it was like midday, like 12:52 or something in the afternoon, which is, you either have a morning race, but that's when she won her medal randomly in the middle, because that was the time that it could be on television. So it's just another component now for the athletes, and social media is another component. But you check in with certain people, but you don't check in with anybody else. Like, you have your rituals. That for me was very important, and focusing on the things I could control and the rest to have fun. The music was about relaxing, letting go, and just kind of having literally a fuck it attitude when you're getting up to race, so that you can let instinct take over, because the preparation is already there.
Actually, in Israel, we work like 16 until 20 hours a week to prepare yourself to be in good competition, in good swimmer. How many hours you practice in a week?
When I was 18, I was 24 hours in the water. Photo albums of pictures of things that, if you want me to show.
Right.
Oh, that's old. That's when I was first starting. So it was 24 hours in the water, and then I would go for 3 runs a week, and then I was doing calisthenics out of the water. So it was about probably 30 hours, not taking into account travel, massage, stretching, 30 hours of just physical. And then as I was older, I would say it was closer to like 22, 24. That's when I was 22 years old, and I was going to the Olympics in Sydney.
Wow.
So I would say there's still the same amount of time and dedication by the athletes today, but a lot of it is out of the water, and it's just smarter training. Again, video analysis, maybe just doing certain things with like a chiropractor to work on with skill, or, you know, weight training outside.
I have a question. I'm going to add to the mentality and the mental aspect of it. Did you, or in general, you know, other athletes, do you have a anchor person, somebody that is not your coach or whatever it is, somebody out of this world, but this is your anchor to bring you back when you start losing it, to say losing it, say, okay, this is a person that right now I need somebody that out of it that's gonna bring me into perspective and gonna focus me back to what's important. I don't want to say necessarily a coach, like a personal coach. I'm not talking about a swimming coach, but somebody from your world that you say, you know, I'm gonna default to this person if I need some, on a personal level, I need some help.
Yes. I think you need a few different people, because it depends on what the need is. So my family was there, I mean, for the Olympics and stuff, they were there for emotional support. You know, when you feel like everything is crumbling down. My first Olympics in '96, where I was 18 and I was rooming with a girl who had an eating disorder. At 18, I ate like a horse. I mean, I ate so much, I didn't think about it, but we were down in Atlanta. The weather was so hot. So I wasn't really eating as much because it was so hot. I was just drinking a lot of water. And I was rooming with a girl who obviously was nutso. And I didn't even put it together. And my coach, you couldn't really be in touch with your personal coaches. He saw me like the 2 days before my race, and he said to me, "You look a little skinny." have you been eating? And I was like, yeah, I've been eating. But, you know, in the heat, you're not paying attention. I mean, and it was one of those things that, you know, I didn't swim that well. I felt like the whole weight of the world was on my shoulders, that I had to be winning gold medals, breaking world records, and I had to make everybody proud and the country proud. And President Clinton was in the stands because his daughter had a crush on a swimmer. So every night we were in the stands. And I was so overwhelmed. There were 17,000 people in the stands. And I know that people couldn't pronounce my name, but they were cheering for me because I had an American flag on my cap. And rather than just focus on having fun and saying, fuck it, I was focusing on trying to make everybody happy and proud, which is, you know, in life, that never works. It never works. But at 18, what did I know? And I spent time with my family, and I would say they were overwhelmed by the experience, right? But I spent a little bit of time thinking about what I needed to do when I swam my best. So probably in my own head going like, I need to get back to when I swam my fastest. And I remember when I swim my fastest is when I'm kind of laughing and just get up on the block. So beyond my family being there for emotional support, I had my friends from when I grew up swimming. I'm still on a WhatsApp group with these are guys that I grew up swimming with since I was the age of like 12. And we're all married now with our own kids, and we make fun of each other in text messages, and we send each other pictures, but they're like my brothers. And, you know, they would make fun of me when I would cry about something. Oh, Teuscher, are you going to cry? Are you going to cry about that? And you need that. You need people who are going to make fun of you and bring you down to reality. I would say now that person is obviously my husband. And I have more mentors now in terms of women, you know, strong, you know, women who are good mentors in that sense. Some of the team managers were that for me at the Olympic Games, but usually it's definitely the teammates who have been through it themselves.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thanks for being here, sharing your story. I want to ask you if you want to share about a little bit, just for me, the kind of the business decision, money stuff, and timeline. How did you, Tal, can you meet people?
Yeah, we're gonna mute everybody that, okay, here we go, talk.
Cool. So I'll try to make the question clear. Kind of at what age you stopped swimming professionally, and if it was, I don't know, like a business decision, like, I mean, money wise, and then what did you do? You said 7 years. How did you, what did you do after that? Or if it's more physical, you stopped because of physical stuff, and more a little bit about the financial side of swimming in terms of, there's money to, like, you were financially okay, or there's no money and you decided to, you know what I mean? It's more like art stuff. I'm coming from music background. I also performed all over the world, transition to life coaching, business coaching, real estate, a lot of stuff. I performed all over, represented Israel. And now a lot of my colleagues, I was doing pretty well. I know a lot of my colleagues that don't have the business sense, they can't push themselves, you know, they kind of just have a dream of performing all over the world and just stuck in a music school. Or so kind of how much was artistic, how much, you know, were you okay financially, how did you decided to move on, what did you do then, and, you know, all that art versus money, or passion versus money and stuff like that.
There were a few things that played into it. So I was a little disenchanted with swimming in the end of my career. In the 2000 Olympics, there was a whole debacle with one of the coaches. I was set to be on the relay, and the coach, who was sleeping with one of the swimmers, had offered the spot to her. He got steamrolled by another coach to put the other coach's swimmer on. Long story short, I got taken off the relay, and I was the captain of the team. I didn't want to make a stink about it, but even the national team director called me and he was like, I have no idea what happened. Why aren't you on the relay? And I had the fastest split on the team. And I had the fastest split from the last Olympics, but I also had just won my best time. So that whole process was just crappy, and it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. All my friends were on to new jobs, and I decided to swim a year professionally from 2000 2001. And at that point, there were no professional swim teams. So I was swimming with like 14-year-olds. And I was living at my parents' home, even though I was professional. Speedo was my sponsor. But at that stage, the Michael Phelps effect had not taken place yet, where swimmers could make a substantial amount of money to really support themselves. So I was—
What was your age then? Like, what was the—
22, 22 to 23. And I was a little depressed. My coach literally said to me, if you're still swimming in a month, I'm going to kick you off the team. He could tell I was just disenchanted with it at that point. And I think it would have been different if I was in a different environment as of now, where there are the pro teams that you can join and you can swim there. And that's a different, but that's not the era I grew up in. And then you know what happened? 9/11. 9/11 happened. And it just, I was born in the Bronx. I'm a New Yorker. And I just said, fuck it. I quit swimming. I was like, there are more important things in life. I joined a relief effort. I worked for a nonprofit, Robin Hood, where we were contacting the next of kin of people who had died. We ended up creating the most comprehensive list of all the victims because, there were so many scammers. Nobody knew what to do, not even the Red Cross. And so we started to basically build a list. Even the Pentagon gave us their list of victims and next of kin, so that our list was eventually shared with the government, with the other nonprofits, so that, scammers weren't. So that just felt like the right decision, right? It was kind of one of those—
You didn't plan it? Like
No.
it feels like one day you're like there and then—
And that probably lent itself to also being a hard transition for me. I didn't plan it. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I worked with this nonprofit. I met a Columbia alum who invited me to work at his hedge fund. I started doing qualitative research for them. After a year, they sent me to London as a junior financial analyst in this hedge fund. And everything seemed to make sense. But in the interim, what was happening, I had let go of my identity as sport. If you meet me now, you would say, whoa, she's definitely not an analyst material. Me behind a computer, you see me, I'm talking all the time. My hands are moving. I'm not somebody to sit behind a computer and, do spreadsheets, DCFs all day. That wasn't my strength. But I was competitive, and it was this thought of like competitive finance capital of the world. I mean, how could this be wrong? I should be able to do this. I could stare at the bottom of a pool all day. I should be able to do this. So I did that for another year. It didn't make sense. I spent a lot of time just following instinct, but I learned a lot from a lot of the jobs I took. So then I worked with a friend's company, taking a swim adventure holiday company, taking people swimming from island to island or across lakes in Europe. And that was wonderful because it was a connection again with the water. But there was no real career in that. And I came back and I started applying to business school thinking, I want to help athletes transition out of sport because I'm having such a hard time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I went to business school. I went to INSEAD. And I think it was really a time to find myself and figure out my next steps. And a lot of my classmates there, business school, it's like, why are you here? You are a swimmer? Like, what are you doing here? And I doubted myself even there. I was like, what? But there was so much for me trying to prove to myself I could be other things. And I ended up working for an education company from there. And I spent time working in HR, and I realized that I really cared about building teams and helping people grow. That was the part that really appealed to me. And so from there, I basically left. I coached at Yale. I coached the women's team. They hired me. I was disenchanted with that because a lot of it was about squeezing the best out of them. And it wasn't really necessarily what was best for those girls. Like, a lot of them should have quit the team. I literally talked a third of the team to quit because I was like, you're not doing this for the right reasons. You should be enjoying this. and then from there, I basically went to get my executive coaching degree, because a lot of sport, and what I had always learned, is that the coach, one with the power, and executive coaching, it was always about being the vehicle to help support and challenge the person. And they are already whole, you're just helping them with the process. And I was like, that was just an epiphany for me. It was like, yes, how come I was never led to believe that, even within my own career? So that has always been a very important part of the journey. So I don't think I wasted time in my journey. I think it was important pieces to take, because you never want to be left with doubt, like, maybe I should have been a financial analyst. And I was like, yep, I tried that. It sucked. I hated it. But to know that I know myself so much better, like even in that role, right? Even if you're in the wrong role, you're going to gravitate to the parts that are your strengths. So even in that role, I was the person who could get certain people on the phone to talk when there was like a crisis happening, because that's what I like to do. I like to connect with people, understand where they're coming from. And so that's what translated and eventually evolved. And I still love executive coaching. I still do things like that and mentorings. You know, I worked with some people who are going to Olympic trials. But now I do it obviously in the part of our business. Our business really is about our kids. My husband and I, he had a career in higher academia, higher education, in academia. And we wanted our family to be first. And so we decided to start our own business so that that's what we could focus on. So that's really where the story comes. It wasn't, I'm more of an artist in that sense. I go by instinct, but I do have my counterparts who I swam with who had their whole life planned, even from when they stopped swimming to being a Rhodes Scholar to, you know, they got their PhD here and now they're working blah, 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 blah. And I look at those people and I go, admire it, but that's never the way my brain worked.
It's not for that, right?
Yeah. How did how did your parents and environment react? You know, when you said it wasn't planned, so you left,
Yeah.
and then like you Tal talked about, it's like, you know, what expected as a swimmer, and you know your all identity. So how did you? What did they do, or how did you?
I mean, that's also another can of worms. I think family relationship and all of that, I had to grow too as my own person. And I think there were roles my family very much played in my whole swimming career that even others expected of them. And so I think there was a big reason of why I went out of the country for a while. There was relief for everybody in that sense, for that structure. And in many ways it was about telling my parents, like, okay, I'm my own person now. Having to verbalize and be like, you can step out of this picture now. That's not your role anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I think that's just family dynamic stuff. That's probably a little more personal, but that's my own personal journey in that piece. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Can I ask something?
Yes.
Okay. In Israel, to prepare somebody to arrive to the Olympic Games, it's approximately $1 million. I want to understand, without the scholarship that you got from the university, who paid another money to arrive to the Olympic Games?
My parents.
Really?
My parents. Everything. Well, so, to get to the Olympics, taxpayers, probably. The USOC, United States Olympic Committee, they basically fund. So the United States Olympic Committee is part of the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. And the International Olympic Committee owns the rights to the Olympic rings and everything related there. And they're the ones who award. So there's a lot of money basically in giving the rights. So when a company, like even when the US team put the Olympic rings, or Speedo was our sponsor, put the Olympic rings on our gear, they had to pay money to the IOC to do that. And then the IOC trickles money down to all the different countries' Olympic committee. So the USOC, the United States Olympic Committee, depending on how many medals you get. So the USOC is very focused on their Olympians producing medals because that means more money for them. And then that money, very little of it trickles down to the actually athletes. There is money, reward money for, but not the right percentage. I mean, there's a lot of there that I don't think is very cleanly done in any of the countries because there's a lot of money behind it. So the USOC has its own sponsors. They get some money from the IOC, and then there's support of the athletes that way. So once you get the Olympic team or USA Swimming, which is the NGO, the nonprofit underneath that reports into the USOC so for swimming, they are a nonprofit. They also have sponsors, and then they also get money from the USOC. And then they're the ones who pay for all of our trips. And then they give us what was literally a negligible amount of stipend. Now I think it's increased, but I think at that point, like all the money they had, like less than 3% was actually going back to the athletes in terms of pay. So there were things like that, that was just that. Obviously, I think Michael helped a lot in changing that. I think that has evolved, and then now athletes are getting their own direct sponsors. But for me, a lot of it was my parents. My parents paid for all of my competitions. My coach, when I got to a certain level, he would pay for some of my competitions. So I'm very grateful to them. I mean, my parents in that sense, really, they were at one point thinking of moving to Texas for my father for work. And then they realized with swimming, they're like, okay, we'll stick around here. And I know that's a big reason. My parents paid for Columbia because Columbia doesn't offer scholarships. So I had a full ride to Stanford. But remember I told you about that coach that in the 2000 Olympics who was sleeping with the swimmer who blah, 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 blah. So he was the coach at Stanford and I didn't want to swim with him.
He has his reputation, huh?
The last sentence
That
of
was a part of his reputation that was known. That was just an unfortunate, isolated piece of what was going on in 2000. But he was also somebody, it was about him. It was about him and what you could produce for him. And I didn't like that at some of the schools I looked at. It was, what can you do for me? It wasn't about what would be best for me. And so I decided that route really for mental health. And I'm grateful to my parents because most parents would say, are you crazy? Go to Stanford and shut up. You can make this work. So I'm grateful to them for that piece.
Okay. Actually, before we finish the webinar, I'm director of sport in the south of Israel here.
Oh, really?
Really. We just finished building excellent center swimming pool.
Where?
In the south of Israel, Arava, if you know. I don't know if you know or recognize this area.
No,
you drive
Yeah.
south, and when you don't see anything anymore,
in the middle of the desert.
You're not there yet. You're not there yet.
In the middle of the desert. But I'm member of the association swimming pool in Israel. And I want to invite you here to be here to make a class, to make a tour here in Israel. If it's okay to invite you, it was
wow, that would be beautiful.
It was my honor to host you here.
Yeah. So the question is when? Maybe not in this coming year, but yeah, I would come with my family. I have some good friends in Tel Aviv, so I'd love to go visit.
Really?
Them. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna make the connection.
Okay.
Business school. It's like the best. I was there for their wedding. It's stunning. I love your culture. It's beautiful. It's a Mediterranean culture. So I married an Italian, so it's very similar. Relax.
I will be in touch with you. Thank you.
Yes.
I'll make the connection. I do have one more question, Cristina, and I know you need to soon, and if somebody else has another question. You took your career right now to training of kids, swimming kids, and obviously this is how we know each other. And one of the things that didn't exist in my time when I was young, and I do see it. And now that I have kids, I see it a lot in the United States, and I'm interested in your opinion about it. And is the approach to training kids and teaching them kids. Obviously, participation medals is a big thing, and my girls a few years back used to play soccer, and nobody counted the goals, so nobody gonna get offended who wins and who. No, I'm not joking. You don't.
I know.
Yeah.
I have a
So.
problem with that, but anyway.
Yeah. And I have my opinion, and I like, let's say like this, I like the commercial when the dad, I don't know if you know the commercial, that the dad take the kids back from get a participation trophy, and it's like, screw that, and he marks it off, and he write down #1 or whatever it is. So I like this commercial. But I was wondering, from you doing this for a living, what do you think about it? What do you think is the right approach? Again, people can agree or not agree, but I'm asking about your opinion about this.
I think there's such a health to competition. I always said, if you want to work with someone, play a sport with them, because you really see people's true nature come out. And I would literally say that sometimes to my teammates, especially when I was swimming pro that year. I'd work with these little kids, like they're 14 years old, 15, they would stop or they would cheat. And I would say, I am never going to work with you. You're a little cheater. And they would look at me like, what are you talking about? And I go, you don't even have integrity to finish a set. And I'm like, this is just warm up. And I would get very, I get very upset about that. But to me, the whole purpose of sport is it's just a vehicle to learn about ourselves, right? So this is one way. At the end of the day, who cares how fast I can swim from one end of the pool to the other? Really, it's about character building. It's about learning about yourself, getting feedback. So in the essence of that, I'm a big believer in failure. I'm a big believer in it really doesn't matter who gets the trophy, but I don't believe that everybody should just get a trophy. I think that getting into this feeling that everybody should get a participation thing and stuff, it's like you create this sense, it's not feedback. In the end, and at the end, I would also say, who cares who gets the trophy? Who cares? But it's good for you to know, like, okay, maybe I could do this better. Maybe I needed to run a little harder. Maybe I needed to, or maybe I just had bad luck on that day because I prepared everything I could and just that way, because that's a reflection of what life is about. Sometimes you do all of this work and it doesn't work out, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're less of a person. You take what you can, you figure out the next steps, and you move on. So in that is what I think, yes. It's really funny because there's a father around this area where I live. He played on the US soccer team, US national team. And his daughter who's played soccer, he goes, his daughter's got participation trophies. He gave them back. He was like, I don't want this. I don't want it.
Oh,
I don't need this. And I can relate. But the funny thing is, my daughter played soccer the other day, and she played on league, and they gave her a participation medal, and she was so proud of it. And she's like, look what I won. And at that point, it's like, I'm like, okay, yeah. But it's like, as she gets older, I do think that stuff, it's important. I'm not going to sit there and go, you didn't win that. That was a person. I'm not going to do that to her. But I do think that there is a benefit. I don't think losing is a bad thing. Why do we make it such a bad thing? It doesn't matter.
We don't like no's, I guess.
Yeah. I lost many more races than I won. That's the thing. I don't know. I don't look at it.
Nobody counts them. That's the point. Nobody counts them.
Yeah. It's part of the process. So it just comes back to that piece about the process. Like, if you have to be in love with the process, you have to enjoy that part of it. You're not going to succeed in anything. If you're just there for the glory, good luck with it, because that is very few and far between, and you can't control that. What you can control is how you approach everything on a day in, a day out basis. And isn't that a reflection then of how you show up in your own family, how you show up in your own life in other ways? That's why sport is important. So I brought my medals to show you guys. Do you want to see?
Yeah,
Of course.
what a question.
Yeah. Well, so this is the gold.
Oh, nice.
So every country gets to determine, right, what the ribbon typically looks like the theme from that year. And then it says, right, it's always embroidered with the, so for, if you look back at Atlanta, it was the Centennial Games. So it says 100 here. And then it was like, right, the olive branch from Greece. The metals that they typically do is the gold is always the heaviest, then the silver, and then the bronze. Up until the 64 Olympics, the golds were pure gold, but then they started kind of disintegrating because people holding them and stuff. So then they started to make them gold plated. So this is gold plated. And they always have Olympia, the goddess, on the front. They have the Olympic Games that it was, where they were held. And then, so it looks like the Roman Colosseum, and I forgot what the name of the building is, but obviously it's a Greek building. On the side, you see the chariot. And then they always have engraved what event it was in. Some people you're offered to get your name on the medal. I didn't get my name on the medal, but they did the engraving here. So it says women's 4x200 free relay. And then on the back, they show the logo from that Olympics, right? If you look up the Centennial, that's what the Atlanta Olympics. And then it just says, yeah, Centennial Olympics, and then the sport. And then the way they did it on these is they actually showed the figurine of the sport.
Yeah.
But many will just have the writing. And so this was the Sydney Olympics. So this is pure bronze. The silver are also silver plated. And so again, you see Olympia, the goddess. So there's certain things that they're uniform that all the medals have to have, and then the other pieces are. And I feel, because now I think with like they're now with the Olympic medals, they're making them like maybe the gold is rim and the inside is glass. Like they keep changing what they're doing. But you see the chariot, that building that I always think looks like the Roman Colosseum, but it's a Greek building. And then here on the back, it says the event, women's 200 individual medley. And then swimming is they engraved it up there, it says. So
Where do you keep them?
safety deposit box. Yeah. And it was funny when I started at Columbia in New York City, they wrote an article about me and they said, Cristina and her medals have found a home here on Morningside campus. And I got in touch with the guy. I go, don't do that. I go, I don't have my medals on me. I go, duh, duh. And my room was actually, I had my room ransacked, and I had my stereo stolen, all of these things stolen during break. So, but I didn't have my medals there. But so yeah, safety deposit box.
I just asked my girlfriend, she's Australian. I said, hey, come and see this. And she said she went to the Olympics then. So
She did. She went to Sydney. So she saw.
She's Australian, so she.
That was the best Olympics. They did, I mean, plus they know swimming. So it was incredible. Such a fun game. Yeah. I couldn't have asked for a better. One was a hometown crowd. And then the next was where swimming is the #1 sport. So I remember getting in a cab and the cab driver asked me my name and he goes, oh yeah, I know who you are, because you read about swimmers in like the gossip pages there. It was so surreal to me. So
Amazing.
I hear somebody say, I don't know how to tell that, but if you never stand on the podium, you never feel happiness in your life. Kind of this, you know what I mean?
that's fatalistic. I mean, I think there's more at this stage. Being an American Olympic athlete, I felt more relief, sadly, because we put a lot of pressure. Like, you need to win medals. We're #1 in this sport for 75 years, and you're part of that tradition. You better win and produce. So I think I felt relief, especially after my first 2 races. And then I think more joy with the bronze medal, because that was just, well, I'm just going to have fun here. Let's see what happens. So I know a lot of people who worked hard, who had the capability and ability and just didn't make the Olympic team, or it fell short. They didn't win their medal, that I know on another day would have. So for me, it's very hard to view it. So, you know, I've seen how unfortunately a medal can also kind of make or break your career and not have anything really to do with ability. that part is just, it's very sobering to watch that whole process. You see that, you see it at Olympic trials now. When I tell you guys to watch, I don't know if you could watch Olympic trials there, if they've already done them, or if they do it, or if it's just a time cut. But if there's any opportunity, watch. It's just the widest range of emotions, complete elation to people crying like in a stupor in the corner. And you see that, and it could be just within tenths of a second, the difference.
There is always a picture of, I don't remember her name, making a face after she won the silver medal. What her name? The gymnastic lady.
Yes.
She's like, she's looking so unhappy getting a silver medal. Like, what just happened? Like.
Well, Jerry Seinfeld makes fun of this. He goes, do you want to know the biggest loser? Look at the Olympics. He goes, the silver medal. He goes, that's the biggest loser. He goes, congratulations, you're the first loser. I mean, people make fun of stuff. I remember Summer Sanders at the 92 Olympics. She broke the American record in the 400 IM. She won the silver medal. She was so psyched. She walked into the press area, and a person stopped her and said, you know, you just lost the gold medal by blah amount of time. How do you feel about yourself representing your country and letting them down? And she was in tears. I mean, she went from feeling so proud of herself to all of a sudden feeling like garbage. And it's so much about, I think that's what's very focused on. I mean, even when they flew us to the White House, guess who got the seats in first class? Guess who got the seats in business class? Guess who had to sit in economy, right? It was tiered by who won medals. It's, you know, I have, because it's been part of my process, it's such a crapshoot sometimes, honestly. You know, incredible athletes who unfortunately just didn't perform well on that day. So I look at it very much from that sober perspective, and I'm very grateful for my experience. But I also know I'm very lucky in that sense too.
No, absolutely. It's part of it. And the feeling is that it's not the perspective of what you do on a single day got lost versus a bigger picture, which is you committed and you dedicated and you worked for it hard. And only for that, you're already at the top of whatever it is. And then if not on that single day, it worked out or not, it's less important. You did what you're supposed to do, and you did it the best you could, and that have a value as well.
It's exciting from the spectator perspective to watch the Olympics in that sense, or the World Cup. We're big fans of watching the World Cup in our house. But I can tell you from an athlete perspective, it can play so many tricks on your mind, right? It's once in a lifetime chance for every 4 years, and then if everything works out well. So yeah, there's a little bit of luck in it.
Like everything in life, no?
Yes.
It's part.
Most importantly, make sure you marry the right person. That takes luck, but that'll affect your life way longer.
I think I'm okay with that. So I'm not going to talk about that, but I think I'm okay with that. Unless somebody have any more questions. Anybody else? Questions? No. I'm going to thank Cristina. Thank you very much for taking the time and speaking with us. It's very enlightening and special experience. And thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure. It was a really fun, and I appreciated the questions. And I'm sorry again for last time.
Don't worry about it. It happens.
And I hope the second time it will be in Israel.
I know, that would be wonderful. So it's all about timing, though. I don't know if I could do anything.
We will talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you kidding? I think I would love to, with my family, to go and visit. That would be wonderful. So
Okay.
We'll make arrangements. Christina, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And
Thanks so much.
everybody that watched us, thank you very much, and good luck, and I'll see you on Saturday.
Take care. Saturday. Bye.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.
תודה טל.
תודה רבה לכם. Thank you, guys. תודה רבה לכולם.
Thanks, bye.